With conference realignment being one of the major talking points in college football over the past several years, I thought it'd be interesting to take a step back, look back at the simpler times, and just see how it all ended up like this. So today we are going to go over the history of the Big Ten from their original 7 members and how one was even kicked out for 10 years for not listening to the conference rules. Get your guesses in now for who you think that was, to how they have become the reigning, defending, undisputed kings of college football. Yes, SEC fans, I'm sure you're not going to like to hear that, but they won back-to-back national championships. That's kind of the status it gives you. Let's take a look at how the Big Ten got its shape. In 1896, they were originally founded as the Intercollegiate Conference of Faculty Representatives. The Big Ten is the oldest Division I conference in the country and is even older than the NCAA itself. It was more colloquially known as the Western Conference and then the Big Nine, but it was founded because of just the nasty nature of college football back in the 1890s. Believe it or not, there were a ton of injuries. There was a lot of death going around. So the president of Purdue invited other local college presidents from Minnesota, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Illinois, the University of Chicago, and Lake Forest College to a meeting with an effort to create some policies and regulate the sport. But unfortunately for Lake Forest, they did not show up for that meeting, so they were replaced by the University of Michigan. Now, the league was very quick to expand. They added both Iowa and Indiana just 3 years later in 1899, bringing the total members to 9. And while Nebraska did apply in both 1900 and 1911 to make it the Big Ten, they were told, thanks, but no thanks. You guys go back to what you were doing. So then the Big Ten, still 9 at that point, went back down to the Big 8 in 1907 when the Michigan Wolverines, the ones that might not have even been in if Lake Forest decided to show up that meeting, were actually kicked out and forced to become independent for 10 years due to their refusal to observe conference rules. I'll put an old newspaper clipping up that you can see for yourself, namely that player eligibility was only supposed to last for 3 years and you weren't allowed to play more than 5 games. My goodness, have times have changed on that front. So during that time that Michigan was out, Ohio State was brought into the conference in 1912, bringing them back up to 9 members. Then in 1916, the Wolverines were let back in, and this is when the conference was first referred to as the Big Ten. From there, things were pretty steady Eddie over the next 20 years until 1939. The University of Chicago decided we are done. We're abolishing the football program. There's a whole negative perception of the high-level college football at that time, and then they just completely withdrew from the conference in 1946, bringing them back down to the Big Nine. And with their departure, there was an open door to the conference again, and many schools were considered for that illustrious 10th spot, including Iowa State, Marquette, Nebraska, yet again, Notre Dame, and Pittsburgh, before it was ultimately decided that Michigan State would become the new 10th member. From here, the conference remained the same for 40 years, and fun fact, the official name of the conference was still the Intercollegiate Conference of Faculty Representatives up until 1987, when they formally incorporated the Big Ten. And it only took them 3 years after that to go against that name entirely and decide to bring in an 11th member, sending an invitation out to the formerly independent, in football at least, the Penn State Nittany Lions. Then a few years after that, you know what, 11... maybe that's not even enough. In 1993, they decided, let's expand some more. Let's try to get to 14 teams so we can create 2 different 7-team divisions for football. Keep that in mind for later. But those talks ended. The Big 8 merged with the Southwest Conference. That made the Big 12. Now with those teams out of the picture, the door was reopened to the seemingly never-ending plea of the Big Ten to Notre Dame. Please stop being independent. Please come join our conference. I mean, really, the conversation began back in 1926. Who knows how many times it's all been brought up, but we all know how that story ends. The conversation stayed just that, and Notre Dame has still remained independent. But fun little fact about this era of the Big Ten, while they were still called the Big Ten, their logo was still the Big Ten. They had 11 teams. They wanted to incorporate that somehow, so they came up with this little, I think I'm pointing the right way, this little jazzy logo. If you look at the negative space, much like the FedEx logo, it's got the little arrow in it. There's a negative space 11 in there to represent, hey, I know the name's confusing, but really there are 11 teams, we promise. That is until 2009. When they decided, you know what, 11's not enough. Let's expand again. And finally, over a century after their initial application to join the conference, Nebraska, the door was open. The Cornhuskers were allowed in, unanimously approved to be the 12th member, which combined with them and Colorado leaving the Big 12, left them with 10. So the Big 10 had 12, the Big 12 had 10. It all makes sense. But now that they were finally at an even number of teams, it was time for some divisions in the Big 10, which brought about the widely loved and appreciated Leaders and Legends divisions. The only real issues with those is that they were not widely loved or appreciated. The names didn't make any sense. The split didn't really make too much sense. It wasn't based on geography. It was supposed to be based off competitiveness. But as we all know with college football, those things kind of rise and fall unless you're Ohio State, which we'll talk more about them in just a little bit. Now, thankfully, the Leaders and Legends did only last for 3 seasons before even more teams came to join the Big Ten party, with Maryland joining in 2014, Rutgers right behind them, finally giving the Big Ten the 14 members they have been after for quite some time, and we could go to a more geographical split of divisions, which finally catches us up to this past season, 2024, the West Coast editions, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, putting the Big Ten at 18 members from coast to coast. And with so many teams now, the conference did decide, I guess we don't need divisions anymore. You know, we were too small for divisions. We were just right. Now we're too big. Let's get rid of them. The 2 top teams at the end of the season will play each other for the conference championship. Sure, why not? So that is how we have gone from the Intercollegiate Conference of Faculty Representatives, or if you wanted to call it the Western Conference or the Big 9, up to the Big 10 we know today with all 18 members. I thought it would be kind of fun at the end of this just look over some historical stats, some historical figures, and, you know, it's not a coincidence I'm wearing a Purdue shirt. Let's look at some of the best teams and the worst team in the history of the Big 10. Starting off with the worst team, because this is going to be fun for me to read through, the Indiana Hoosiers. So, Indiana, as you probably know, if you remember from a couple minutes ago, they were an original member of the Big Ten. They have been playing football for 127 seasons. An awful long time. They have an all-time record, 493, 692, and 38, a 42% win percentage. Not great. Add on to that, their first 10-win season in school history, 127 seasons, remember, was last year in 2024, and these stats are really going to be something when we put up a little side-by-side of the best Big Ten team throughout this stretch as well. And also through those 127 seasons, this one is going to be a game. I'll let you guys get a guess in. How many conference championships, Western, Big 9, Big 10, whatever you want to call it, has Indiana won? 127 years. Surely they have won, I don't know, 8 or 9? Wrong. That's a bad guess. They've won twice. Two. They've been in since 1896 and won the conference twice. You should be ashamed of yourselves, Hoosiers. They've started a season ranked 3 times in 127 years. They've ended a season ranked 7 times, so that does show some improvement year over year, or throughout the season. Good job, Indiana. Total weeks ranked throughout the school's history, 79. Averages 0.62 weeks per season. Bowl games, they have made 13 in 127 tries. And in those bowl games, they have a 3-10 record. They have 0 Heisman trophies, 0 national titles. And this is really encapsulates Indiana for me. Their struggles against some conference rivals. 27 games played against Penn State, they are 2-25. 26 games played against Notre Dame. 3-23. 94 games played against Ohio State. Ready for this one? How about another game? They've played 94 times against Ohio State. How many wins does Indiana have over that time? Ding, ding, ding. Give you about 5 seconds. 9, 81 and 4. 73 games against Michigan. They are 11-62. Okay, how about the University of Chicago from way back when? 25 games played. 4 wins in that one, 4-20-1, and of course, the main rival, Purdue Boilermakers, played 120 times. This one is closer than the rest to give them a little bit of credit. They are 43-71-6. So it's just been a rough, well, we'll say 126 season stretch for Indiana. Maybe last year was the one. It's finally turning around for them. They're due. They're due for a good season. Who's due for a bad season? Of course, it is going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes, just a historically dominant, just year after year. I don't know how they do it. It drives me insane. But we'll look at the same stats we did for Indiana. Now, seasons played, they are only at 114. Bunch of bums. Their all-time record, though, 870, 286, and 36 for a 76% win percentage. Their first 10-win season, remember Indiana's was just last year, 2024. Ohio State's 1954, 70 years before Indiana's. Conference championships, 40. They started the season ranked 71 times. That's only, what, 43 that they haven't been ranked for, about 66%, something like that. They have started the season ranked, ended it ranked 64 times. So kind of the opposite there. Indiana ended the season ranked more often than they started. Ohio State didn't. Total weeks ranked 999. So week 1 coming up here will make 1,000 total weeks for Ohio State being in the AP poll. 8.76 per season. Is that what that comes out to? Bowl games made 47. They do have a 24-23 record there. I thought that would be a little bit better. Heisman trophies, they've got 7. National titles, they've got 9. It's pretty stark difference when you lay it out like that. Only other thing I really want to mention here is the history of the Heisman trophies in the Big Ten, where if my math is correct, they have won a total of 15, led by Ohio State. But the first one, 1935, the first ever Heisman Trophy given out to Jay Berwinger. I'm going to destroy some of these names. Apologies in advance if you're familiar with him, but from the University of Chicago. 1939, Mr. Kinnick himself for Iowa. 1940, Tom Harmon for Michigan. 41, Bruce Smith for Minnesota. 44, the first for Ohio State, Les Horvath. 1950, Vic Janovitz, Ohio State. 1954, Alan Amici, Wisconsin. 1955, Ohio State. They really had a stranglehold on it here. And then that was Howard Cassidy, by the way. And then it was about 20 years until finally Archie Griffin won another for Ohio State in 1974. And then it was a whole year until Archie Griffin did it again. Back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners. Desmond Howard for Michigan in 1991. Eddie George for Ohio State 95. Charles Woodson, Michigan 97. Ron Dane, Wisconsin 99. And the last but not least, Troy Smith for Ohio State in 2006. So that's our whole history of the Big Ten. I thought it was fun to do a little deep dive, mainly to take shots at Indiana, yes, but you can't really blame me for that too much now, can you? Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think we'll probably do the SEC next. I think that would be an interesting one, considering they've actually had teams leave the conference that are still somewhat nationally relevant. The only team that ever really left the Big Ten was the University of Chicago, who just never really got back to any sort of relevancy. Sorry, I think they're the Maroons, if I want to say right, you bunch of Maroons. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you next time. Until then, take it easy.